Super Retro Force.
In 1987, we would see a slew of different cartoons, TV shows, movies, and of course, video games being presented to us. And in today's video, we are going to continue our journey going down the path of what I feel are the best video games of their release year.
Now you're playing with power.
Wizards and Warriors was just such a fantastic game to be released in 1987. There wasn't very many fantasy type games up to this point that kind of had that RPG type feel kind of sprinkled in there with the platforming aspects. And the way that Wizards and Warriors was executed, I just felt was just so well put together. Of course, one could argue because of a game being made from 1987 that there might be some things that just didn't age quite well, like let's just say the music. But if you can get past the music and just look at the gameplay in of itself, I am sure that even if you are new to retro gaming, that you could play this game and not only get enjoyment from it, but also get a good challenge from it. But overall, Wizards and Warriors I thought was a great game and definitely was worth putting on my top 5 for the games released in 1987. Kid Icarus is next up at number 4, and this game is another one that is just so well put together for a game of its time. There was different elements to it that I thought were quite intriguing for a game released back in 1987. One being that as you're traversing through each level, in certain spots you can actually go, say, from the right side of the map, and when you go to walk off, you'll appear on the left side of the map or vice versa. Prior to me playing this game, I don't think I actually did play something that had something like this integrated into the game. And it was just something that I thought was a cool concept, and it kind of added to the intrigue from a strategy standpoint to try to dodge certain things from enemies that are coming down on the screen. So that way, if one's kind of getting close to you on the right side, you can hurry up and go to the right side of the screen, and then you'll pop over on the left, and then you won't have to worry about getting hit. There was one thing that was a little weird at first for me to get used to. So when you're playing this game, you collect hearts, or like half of hearts, and it was quite mind-boggling to me as a child that the hearts had nothing to do with health and were actually like the in-game currency to be able to purchase certain items. I can just remember being frustrated going, why would you collect hearts when you're trying to purchase stuff? Why aren't we collecting coins or gems? It just didn't make sense. But of course, once I got over that and just started enjoying the gameplay, I definitely got immersed into it because I absolutely loved the layout on how everything was just thrown out there. I liked the aspect of being able to shoot the arrows in an upward projection and not just being left to right. And for how much I played this game growing up, I just knew for certain that this one had to, at the very least, make my top 5 for the year 1987. Spy Hunter is coming in at number 3, and to be honest, it just barely got ahead of Kid Icarus, and my reasons for that is that for me personally, I played the crap out of this game back in the day. Now, mind you, I did primarily play it in the arcades, but I did play it on the NES, rather it was on the original hardware or it was through emulation. And although some of you guys might know I'm not a really big fan of racing games per se, but I did love the aspect of this game being able to not only drive the car, but you're also strategizing on trying to shoot different things and trying to traverse through each section of the game. Now, there was one part that I did not know about Spy Hunter until way later in life, and that is the aspect that the game is completely endless. So no matter how well you play the game, you're never going to technically beat it. It's just going to be a constant grind, and then whatever your high score is, that is what you end with. But that was something I kind of feel was cool at the same time, so that way technically you could just go forever and ever and ever and just try to keep challenging yourself to get a better score each time you play. But I definitely will say this is one that is very challenging as well, and if you are new to retro gaming, or again just maybe you missed out on this or you just haven't played it in a while, I suggest going back and testing out Spy Hunter. Of course, how could we do a top 5 list going over games released in the 80s without talking about the original Blue Bomber, the Mega Man on the NES that started it all? For a game of its time, Mega Man pushed those bounds of what we could do on not only a run and gun style game, but also with platforming. And as we know, Mega Man has a little bit of a formula with the bosses as far as they have different weaknesses from the weapons that you collect from each boss, which gives it that unique strategy when going through and playing each level. The one thing you'll note that this one has that some of the newer ones do not have is a scoring system. This was something I thought was pretty cool when I first played it, because I actually didn't play this one first, but when I went back and seen that you could actually get a score from killing things, I personally thought that was a really cool take and something that I wasn't quite sure why they actually eliminated it. I don't know if maybe it was one of those things where they felt it just wasn't worth the coding for it and just more or less wanted the rest of the series to be focused just more around the adventure of playing as Mega Man throughout each level and not focusing so much as to what your score is going to be at the end. But nonetheless, Mega Man, if you have not played the original, I swear you will get enjoyment from this, and you should most certainly check it out. And coming in at number 1 for me is Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And I know it might not be a popular pick for being number 1, but when I had to be realistic as to what was the game that I probably played the most, not only as a child, but also going into my young adult years, it had to be Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Being a kid growing up in the 90s, knowing you could play a game where you could potentially beat Mike Tyson, which, did not happen for me as a kid. It took me until I was a little bit older before I finally beat Mike Tyson. But knowing that you could play a game and know that he was in there, you knew you were going to be in for a challenge. Some people might argue that it might not be quite as great of a game or as complex maybe as some of the other games that we previously talked about. The nostalgia for me just hits so hard. It just brings up so many memories. It's one of those games that I can fire it up and it's like it just sucks me back in time, and I just get so much enjoyment while playing it. The timing mechanics were really good for a game of its time and something that I thought was a good touch. So again, being back then, you didn't have the internet, so unless you got a strategy guide, it was very hard to try to organically figure out how to defeat each fighter. The one thing that comes to mind that makes me kind of chuckle is every time I see Soda Popinski, it just makes me laugh, because there were so many kids that I used to remember talking to when talking about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out or just Punch-Out in general. It was, "Can you beat Soda Pop?" And I was going, oh man, this guy must be pretty hard. And then when I finally got to play him, he was one of the more easier characters, and I honestly felt like he should have been earlier on in the game instead of later in the game. But outside of him, you could definitely tell that as you progressed, the difficulty got a little bit more and more intense. Of course, going and playing Super Macho Man, as he's flexing them pecs on you, I mean, he just does it so obnoxiously. It's just so hilarious. And then if you can make your way through Super Macho Man, you get to face the one and only Iron Mike Tyson. And of course, for me as a kid, when I finally got to play him, even though I was a teenager at this point, it was still very intimidating because I knew it was going to be really, really hard. I knew I was going to have to play it on emulation and then be it via save states. And then finally, one day, I did in fact beat the game organically, and it was one of those wins where I just felt like this huge weight lifted off my shoulders. And for those reasons, that is exactly why Mike Tyson's Punch-Out for me is number 1 on my games of 1987. Let me know what you guys thought about this in the comments below, and then I'll be seeing you in the next video.